Pin loom weaving. How to get started on your own basic loom to make a lot of exciting projects using regular shapes. Two particular books are very handy. The first one I'd recommend is Pin Loom Weaving by Margaret Stump, and this has lots of projects for the tiny hand looms that we're going to look at making, and more importantly for now, templates. 4x4 is what we're going to be using, but there are other ones, as you'll see, 2x2, 2x4, 4x6 and a giant 6x6. But let's not jump ahead of ourselves. We're going to stick on a 4x4 for this. The other book I'd recommend if you want to do pin loom weaving is 100 Pin Loom Squares by Florencia Campos Correa. It works on the Zoom loom and other small looms as well. First challenge is finding a suitable frame in which to make pin looms. I would suggest plywood. You can use beech plywood or birch plywood. The idea is, although this is an old painted picture frame, the fact that it is plywood means that the special pins you're going to use, which are these veneer pins, and they are very tiny. You need to find the smallest diameter pins you can with a tiny head on them, and these veneer pins I got from a store in the UK called The Range. You get 50 grams of them. You will need to have enough pins in order to fit your template. Now, from the book I showed you, this is a template that I will be able to just put straight on top of the back of this veneer frame, then start driving these veneer pins straight through in order to make a pin loom. If you haven't got the patience, or perhaps you're not able to make your own loom, in the UK there are various people on the shopping channels such as eBay who make and their own websites who make these pin looms. Here is a beautiful one which I purchased from a wonderful seller, and this is very professional made. You'll see that going along them they have to have triplets of these tiny veneer pins. This will make a 3-inch square, and at the ends there are special arrangements, and this will be made by a special template, and this is a beautifully made pin loom, handmade by someone, and this is the quality of what you can make on this. And this sort of square again is going to take around 20 minutes to half an hour to make, and you will get quicker as time gets on. That's the simplest pattern. Based on the purchase of the loom I've just shown you, I decided to up my game. I went to a local shop that sells picture frames, and in this case it was Hobbycraft, and I found they had some in a sale. They were like seconds. I took off all of the backing pins. I discovered that this is the ideal material. You'll notice that it has got the correct veneered layers there. So plywood, this could be birch wood possibly, or beechwood ply, and the idea of plywood is it can take these tiny veneer pins without splitting the wood. So I turned it on to the other side and I used my own template. What I did, actually, if you just put the camera to here, is I used a 4x4 template. I scanned it into my PC. I found this template was slightly too small for my liking, so using the simple techniques that you can on scanned pictures on most PCs, I enlarged it slightly so that the distance across was 4.5 inches. I then printed it out, put it on top of the frame, and then just drove my veneer pins in accurately through the actual template. So for instance, here is a template here. You simply place the template over the frame, okay, and then you start nailing through these black circles neatly as much as you can. And I found when I made this one, I knew this was going to work. Underneath it you've got plenty of space in which to use another hand, and you have to warp it in a particular way. The books will tell you how. There are other instructions around on the tube, and you basically see how you can warp this up. And this is the first square made on this loom, and as far as I can see, this should be able to make very accurate squares. This is the most basic pattern, and you've got a little screw there that I put, a little wood screw that I used from the old picture frame itself, flat underneath, light, easy to use, and this will introduce you to weaving in a way in which you may not want to be involved on a larger machine and a larger loom, basically. Here we see the very first square on this loom being taken off using a very long needle to make, and you'll see that how easily it lifts off the triplets of the veneer pins. Again, the pins I use 20mm pins, veneer pins. I got them from a shop called May well sell these veneer pins. Make sure it is their most narrow, and there is an American brand called the Zoom. You will find that this square is coming in at 4.5. That's just what I said. It's a 4.5 inch square. That's a decent sized square. And that should be able to be turned out in between 20 minutes and half an hour. So that's the first one ever made on a loom which I made today. And it took me less than an hour to make this loom. The biggest problem I had was getting the correct choice of material, the plywood, by the birch plywood or beech plywood veneer. Basically, you've got to have these layers inside the wood that will take these pins without splitting. Here are some possible frames you could use to make them. This one I got from Pound World. Originally had logos on it, Princess, but this side's no use to me. I ripped off part of that, so what we need to do is get into the back of this. You take the glass out and take the other part of it, which might be corkboard, whatever the backing is, hardboard at the back of it, and you're left with these clasps. These have to come out. Get your screwdriver and take them out, because they're in your way, because this is the side that your pins are going to be on, you see. Okay, on my plywood frame, which originally cost me £1 at Pound World, I've now taken all the paraphernalia out I don't want, and I've got my template here. The idea is you're supposed to paste your template over the frame. In this case, I can actually see through where I would like my panel pins to be nailed, and you need to check that there's a nice square for you to work on without getting in the way of anything else. So here I'm looking along and think probably need to move this up slightly. You can of course use a ruler and measure if you wish, and this particular template I'm using, say in centimetres, would come out as just over 12 centimetres. Okay, and once you're happy with how the square is, you lay it on. You can just leave it there, make sure it's going to be safe so that your veneer pins can go through, and you can see that's looking good. So then all you do, you get a veneer pin, which is here, and start on one of them. Say start at the bottom here, make sure you hit the centre of the target. Okay, get your hammer and gently tap, and underneath I'm working this with a cutting board, a wooden cutting board. Don't hit the pins in too far. That's far enough for now. Okay, you saw I didn't do too many taps. Okay, and going for the second one in the corner, gentle tap. Okay, you can always go off later and put more taps in, but don't go mad with the taps, because remember, you don't want these pins to go in too deeply. You're not wanting to split the plywood. Okay, and then I'm into my third corner. Just a couple of taps just to hold it in for now till we get the whole template straight, and we can then put all the extra pins in later. Okay, here you can follow the pattern. There's one down the bottom here. Okay, work carefully and slowly. Okay, there you go, and there's another one there that's slightly curved. It doesn't matter so much as long as you can straighten it up later. I'm not going to carry on hammering the rest of these right now, because you don't want to watch me put all the pins in, but suffice to say that this is the one I made earlier today. Once it's been made, you can see that you have these sets of triplets. This is the one we used to show you the square that was taken off before, and the instructions will show you from the book. You have to put numbers. There's a 1 there, that points to this one here, a 2 that points to this pin here, a 3 that goes around there, 4 in that corner there. Okay, and also off the number 1 I've put a little screw, and you'll have plenty of these spare little screws lying around. There's some here, for instance, from the back of a picture frame where they had little clasps to hold them on, so that you're aiming to have a pin loom that looks something like. Okay, so now I've finished hammering in my veneer pins. Remember, these are 20mm very thin veneer pins, and hopefully made my loom here. This is just under 4 3/4 inches square. The template having been enlarged somewhat using the method I showed you on Microsoft Word. I'm now ready to get the whole thing off, and this of course cost me £1 at Pound World. Perfect frame for this, because it's veneer, which would it's laminate basically. So basically, if you go along the actual edges like so to your panel pins, your veneer pins, sorry, then like so, I would suggest you can use a pair of scissors in the gap. That's it. And the idea is to work it off gently, to get your template off gently. Don't be ripping the pins off with it. And you should find, if you're gentle, that they'll come off. There you go. It's a bit like unwrapping a present, really, isn't it? Quite exciting. These pin looms, as I said earlier, were used a lot in the 1930s, particularly in the US. But in this day of crafts really coming back into vogue and helping people with increasing self-confidence and getting to learn new skills, it's got to be a good thing to be able to make something yourself that you could then make these beautiful squares from. That's the most basic pattern, and then all this needs to be done. And even this was made by my beginner loom. This one, of course, the red one, was made on the first successful pin loom I made, which came from a picture frame that came from Hobbycraft. And of course, this one here would then work out as the most basic one, because this particular frame came with glass and a backing, was only £1 from Pound World. But this pink princess picture frame, which I got from Pound World, I'm of course working on the reverse side of it, and I'm using a template that I resized to about 4.5 inches. I can show you the results later. Other frames I might have a go at these are picture frames which you can buy, and I've obviously taken the glass out and the wood at the back. Personally, if I was working on this frame here, I'd be working on this side here, again using veneer pins. And you'd have to size your pins using the scanner on your computer to make sure you've got a template like this the right size by trial and error, by resizing it on your screen. This one here, I got this from the range. These come as pairs, and you join them together to make a square. And I thought, rather than gluing them, I'd actually use the veneer pins. And again, you could make a pin loom on these using veneer pins. Again, you'd have to make the template very accurate, and I'll have to check whether a 4-inch or 4.5 inch would work. Really need to run right in the middle of the wood. Not sure whether this one will split or not. I'll just have to find out. The idea is to keep your costs down and experiment. And of course, if you can't wait, as I said earlier, buy one made by a professional person. This one was from eBay, and there are other websites you can look around for pin looms, say in the UK. But this is beautifully made. That's a 3-inch square if you just wanted to start in a hurry. This is a 4x4 inch pin loom diagram which has been downloaded, and it can be manipulated in Microsoft Word. Basically, you can then drag and drop a corner to resize the template, and because the screen can have things on actual size or relative to actual size, you can then use a tape measure. This is the actual size of the template for a pin loom 4x4. And you can use this by using the simple tools in Microsoft Word. You can drag and drop it to make it a larger pin loom template, which you would print out. In this case, the loom size has been enlarged to around 4.5 inches, which is what I use. You can even make the template much larger. For instance, you could make yourself a 6-inch loom using the same technique. In this case here, this is about 5.5 inches. And of course, you can also make it smaller, shrunk right down to make a loom that might say be 3 inches or even 2 by 2, and it maintains the proportion so that it's a square or can be resized for any type of loom you want. Once you're happy with your template that you've got from the download site, then you just have to go into File and Print, and then away you go. Print your template off